discovery is all about the financial issues. In New York, we don't have discovery for custody issues. Now, I know that's not true across the country, but in New York, which is where I practice, there is no discovery for custody. And we'll talk about that in a second, but there is definitely discovery for financial issues. So what does that mean? It means, first of all, you would normally exchange what's called statements of net worth. They're sworn to. You put all of your expenses, and you usually use the year prior to figure out what your expenses are per category. So there'll be all sorts of categories: your rent or your mortgage, your taxes, vacations, clothing, food, groceries, dining out, your children's extracurricular activities, educational expenses. All of that goes in the beginning of the net worth statement. And then you're going to move on to the assets and the liabilities. And you'll then have what's called a sworn statement of net worth. Those are exchanged. That is the beginning of the discovery process. Now you have the framework for what are the assets and the liabilities, hopefully. Now, sometimes your spouse may not actually put down all of the assets and the liabilities, and they may not accurately report what the expenses are. Perhaps they think if they don't accurately report the expenses, they may pay less in support. Or perhaps all of the assets and liabilities aren't there because they made a mistake, an honest mistake, or perhaps they deliberately didn't put these assets and liabilities down because they just didn't want you to know about them. And so now here comes the difficult part. This is the part where you're actually sending out what are called discovery demands. Now, demand is a harsh word, but that's what they're called. They are demands for certain documents. And you're going to be looking at credit card statements and bank statements and perhaps other documents. If there's a business involved, you may be looking at general ledgers, and you may be looking at loans that were taken for the business, and you may get financial statements that have been offered to banks and other entities. And you're going to do a very thorough look at the tax returns, both business and personal. And this is when all of this discovery comes in. Then you're going to see what's missing from the discovery. Is the discovery deficient? And that's very important because you need to know if the discovery is deficient. Have things been left out? Are there years left out? Are there credit card statements left out? Are you seeing a payment, for example, to American Express from the checking account, but there's no American Express statements being shown to you? That is a red flag. Is something on the net worth statement, but you're not getting the documentation for it? Is something being transferred to another account, but you don't have that account information? Is something listed on the schedule in the tax return? Are there accounts showing dividends or distributions, but they're not on the net worth statement and you have no documentation for it? You're then going to send what's called a deficiency notice as to what you believe is deficient from your discovery that you've just received pursuant to your discovery demand. And then you're going to probably go to the next step. And that is taking a deposition, which is asking questions under oath of the other party. And that is very important. It's important to understand what the assets and the liabilities are. And sometimes the assets and the liabilities are complex. There may be, for example, hedge funds. Perhaps there's restricted stock units. Perhaps you need to know what the vesting schedule is for those restricted stock units. Maybe there's bonuses involved in compensation. Perhaps there's a business and you have questions about the general ledger or how people are being paid or why they're being paid certain amounts. So this is the opportunity to ask all of those questions. And you may work with an expert, actually, a forensic accounting firm that may help you formulate some of those questions, or real estate experts, or valuators of software that someone may own. This is all part of discovery, and it's a process, and it's important that you go through that process.